Hello world, I'm an average Joe and I play games, and welcome to my review of Halo Combat Evolved. And so if you missed it, I just played through a blind playthrough of Halo Combat Evolved. I've never played Halo before. Go back and watch that series because it is very entertaining. Gameplay in the background is me playing the legendary, or I guess the infamous library mission on Legendary, and after taking a silly death in the beginning, I think I do pretty darn good playing it, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that. So in this video, I'm going to give you my thoughts after I've had a few days to think about the Halo Combat Evolved game as a whole, having never played it for the first time, just completed a playthrough of it, and I kind of broke down my review into five different categories. So let's start out with the story. And the story I broke down into two different categories. We have the originality of the story and the execution of the story. And I'm going to grade all of these on a 1 to 5 scale, where 1 is very poor, 5 is hands down amazing. So as far as originality goes, I'm giving Halo Combat Evolved a 3, just an average score, which I don't think is a bad thing. So the Halo Combat Evolved storyline is kind of a classic storyline. Bad guys have a super weapon. You have a faceless superhero that has to save the day, and so it's not necessarily a bad thing to have an unoriginal story. I mean, look at something like Star Wars, which has kind of the classic hero's journey story, and it's very, very well executed. And when I say Star Wars, I mean the original Episode 4, New Hope. Executed very, very well, both in Halo and in Star Wars, that can make up for not having, an off-the-charts original story, because not everything can have an, this amazingly original story. After all, there's only so many stories that can be told. So next up, we have execution, and I would have given this a 5, except for the last about 3 minutes of the game. So my final score is going to be a 4, and let me tell you why I was disappointed in the last 3 minutes of the Halo 1 story. So first of all, there was no closure with Guilty Spark, and so throughout the last couple of missions, Guilty Spark becomes the primary antagonist, and then there's nothing spoken of him ever again. There's no there's no closure to that. Even just a very brief cutscene of Guilty Spark kind of shaking his fist saying, "Next time, Master Chief, I will get you." That would have brought closure to that storyline, the storyline behind that antagonist. And continuing kind of my Star Wars analogy, this is done at the end of A New Hope, when Darth Vader's TIE fighter kind of rights itself, and it shows Darth Vader kind of shaking his fist at the good guys and saying, "I will get you next time." Not really, but kind of metaphorically. And so I felt like that was really missing to bring final closure to the storyline. And also, there was a significant plot hole in the storyline. So the last 3 or 4 missions, the Flood are the primary antagonists, along with Guilty Spark. And at first, the Flood looks like this mindless zombie horde, but then you have this entire mission where they capture the Captain Keyes, and you have to go and try to rescue him. But no, they were actually trying to assimilate him, or get information from him. And it's this reveal that the Flood are not just this mindless horde, but they actually have some intelligence behind them. And so it's actually a significant development point in the development of the Flood, which I praised the Halo story development on during the series. But there was a significant plot hole at the end, and so it's right during the chase when you get to the bridge and Foehammer goes down, and Cortana's like, "But wait, there's another ship that we can take off of this rock." And right there was the plot hole, because the entire game, the Flood are trying to get off of Halo so they can go out and conquer the galaxy, or whatever it is that the Flood actually do. And throughout the game, they have assimilated multiple humans through, from the Marine Expeditionary Force, or whatever their name is in Halo lore. And so one would imagine that at least one of those Marines had the knowledge that there were these things, had knowledge of spacecraft, the human spacecraft, and would know how to recognize them and know how to fly it. So the entire time that the Flood were, all over the Pillar of Autumn, there was a spaceship setting right there, which was what the Flood wanted all along. So there's your plot hole. Why didn't the Flood realize that there was a spaceship setting there that they could use to escape Halo and achieve what they've been trying to accomplish the entire time? So because of those two gaps in the Halo story, the lack of closure around Guilty Spark and the plot hole around the Flood escaping Halo, I'm going to give the execution for the story 4. I still think it was done very well, but I am hypercritical when it comes to story plot holes. I love CinemaSins and those types of YouTube channels that will point out where there is plot holes in movies. That's just something that I like doing. Next up, we have music. As far as music goes, the music and the entire sound design for Halo was done very, very well. 5 out of 5 here. There's really no complaints in the way that the music was done. As far as gameplay, and so this includes I guess music and graphics. The remastered graphics were definitely a boost to this series. They removed some of the inaccessibility of the original graphics, because I'm sure when it first came out in 2001, the original graphics were par for the course at the time. I mean, this game came out just a few years after GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, which I played a ton of back in the day. But I think that the original graphics really would have been a roadblock to modern audiences being able to play the game. But the remastered graphics are perfectly fine. They're nothing to write home about, but they are not distracting in any means. And after a few minutes in the game, you're not looking at the graphics anyways. Next up, we have gameplay. And gameplay is definitely a 5 out of 5. Bungie did a great job in designing the gameplay of Halo. I know you guys have heard me ramble about this throughout the entire series, so I'm not going to belabor the point here. But Bungie really worked on developing the mechanics of the game and sticking to the in-universe mechanics that are developed. And so a lot of times in video games you will have asymmetrical mechanics, and so you die with 3 shots, but then the boss can soak up 400 shots for absolutely no reason. A lot of the times you'll have mechanics like that just don't make any sense. Not in Halo. The Halo universe, at least in Combat Evolved, is very consistent. You die in a couple of shots, your enemies die in a couple of shots. The enemies have shields that recharge just like you have shields. Some enemies have shields that recharge just like you have shields that recharge, and everything that doesn't have shields dies in a couple of shots. Just like after your shield goes away, you die in a couple of shots as well. It's all very fair, very consistent. And so I appreciate that in a game that I know what to expect as I approach it. And there's also the great use of kind of building on itself, where you have you'll be introduced to a new mechanic or a new enemy or a new weapon, and you'll have a little bit of a training period, but then throughout the rest of the game, you'll have all of these different scenarios that are thrown at you where you have to learn how to master that particular mechanic or that particular weapon or that particular vehicle or whatever. And once you've mastered it, you truly feel like a boss, even though there was no leveling up or any type of RPG elements like other games rely on. So I think that Halo was refreshing for me because I feel like a lot of times modern games use RPG elements in place of lazy game design, because a lot of times games that are not truly RPGs but yet introduce RPG elements, the RPG elements don't add anything to the game. And so I really appreciate that through good game design, Bungie was able to get the same type of level up feel without actually having those elements in there, and I really appreciate that. And last up, we have gun and enemy design, and again, I thought that they did just enough here, and so I'm going to give them 4 out of 5, above average. I still think that this, particularly for the time period, given the limitations of the original Xbox hardware, I think they did a very good job adding in enough enemies that there's plenty of variety as you're playing the game. And this kind of ties into my previous point about game design, that that Bungie really maximized their use of their enemies, because just throwing in different scenarios. So, like, for example, that bridge encounter that I died like 20 times on. We had seen all of those enemies up to that point, but it was an entirely new it was an entirely new encounter that required me to think entirely differently about how I approach the game, just by adding a few of them on the other side of the bridge and giving a few of them, needlers, and a few of them the plasma pistols, and a few of them plasma rifles. Just even those 3 different weapons operate so differently that it really introduced a new combat situation that I really appreciated. And along the lines of gun design, I think that Bungie really did it right with this game. There's a wide enough variety of weapons that none of them are useless, none of them are underpowered, and none of them overlap in their function. And because you can only carry 2 weapons, how many times throughout the series did I bellyache over which weapons to carry? Because each weapon is good at only a select number of things. Even take like the assault rifle. All too often, the first weapon that you get is either so overpowered that nothing else matters. So I'm thinking about like Modern Warfare 2 and the FAMAS, the first weapon that you unlock in multiplayer, is so good that you never really want to use any other weapon. You either have that extreme, or you have the extreme where the first weapon that you get is such garbage that you never want to use it again. So I'm looking at you, Destiny, where the first, your weapons are quickly outclassed and you're on this endless gear treadmill. Compare both of those kind of paradigms where games get things wrong to Halo, where you have the assault rifle, which starts out really underpowered because you're fighting the Covenant, and it's not very good against the Covenant. And you actually want Covenant weapons to fight the Covenant. But then halfway through the game, when the Flood are introduced, all of a sudden the assault rifle is amazing to take out all of the little chest huggers or chest bursters. And so, all of a sudden, this gun that you had thrown aside, many missions beforehand as being worthless, now all of a sudden is a key part of your arsenal, and you seriously have to contemplate every single time that you pick it up whether you want to take that or another weapon. You have to sit there and think about what your encounters are going to be and how you're going to approach the game, because the weapons that you pick for your loadout heavily influence how you approach different encounters in the game. So there you go. I've rambled on enough for 13 and a half minutes now. I'm going to go ahead and end the episode here. I definitely had a blast playing this game, and try to be as fair as I could in my assessment of it. Apologize if I insulted anyone out there that is a longtime Halo fan, just trying to look at this game critically, and to comment on some of the good things that they definitely got right, and a couple of the things that they could have improved on. So next up, we will have the start of our Halo 2 series. I'm looking forward to it. Subscribe, follow me on Twitter, do all of that good stuff so you never miss an episode of Halo coming up, and we will see you in the next game.